I totally underestimated Vice Project Doom. I remember seeing the cover art in Nintendo Power as a child, but when I came across the copy I now own, I didn't really know anything about it. I popped it in and the first stage was a driving stage, so I assumed that must be the format for the game. Whatever, not my thing. On the shelf it went, at least for a few months. Imagine my surprise a few months later when I beat the first level and all of a sudden it was an action-packed platformer. Even further into the game, there's a third-person scrolling shooting section. I've always been a big fan of games that make use of multiple genres, and this game really delivers in that department. The graphics are nice and stylish, the music is catchy, and overall, it's just a fantastic game. Whenever anyone asks me to recommend an obscure NES game, the first title that comes to mind is Vice Project Doom. It's one of the most overlooked and underappreciated third-party game designs to ever hit the NES, even after claiming a cover of Nintendo Power in 1991. Drop your memories in the comments. Thanks for watching. We all have that friend who had a little bit more money than everyone else. The friend who always seemed to have the most expensive stuff, the newest shoes, the coolest bike, and of course the most video games. I had a friend like this, and one day while browsing through his NES cartridges, I came across The Guardian Legend, a game I had never heard of. I looked at the cover, which, like a lot of game covers back in the day, offered no help as to what to expect. But the back of the box, there was no way I wasn't going to love this. I borrowed it from my friend that day, and I still have it. I immediately fell in love with this weird little game. What I saw in the back of the box, a mix of Blaster Master and The Legend of Zelda-style dungeon crawling and a space shooter, was exactly what I got. And it was gorgeous, with a killer soundtrack to boot. I was amazed by the depth of the game and have gone back to it often. I find new things to love every time I play it, but will never forget that first time. I'm not sure any game has blended genres as well as The Guardian Legend, and maybe nothing ever will. YY World 2's story is your basic save the damsel affair, but the underlying tale is what you're here for. The evil wizard Warumon decides he should be the one in charge of YY World. He kidnaps Princess Habu, which in turn plunged the kingdom into chaos. Dr. Cinnamon sneaks off during the commotion and creates a Mega Man-like robot named Rikuru to put an end to Warumon and save the princess. Rikuru has the ability to change into 5 different Konami heroes, 2 of them being Simon Belmont and Bill Riser. The other characters, Gomon, Upa, and Fuma, are from Konami games that were only released in Japan. And that's the beauty of this title. Once you get into the game, it beckons you to learn about the characters Japan got to grow up with. YY World 2 is a perfect blend of old-school NES Konami. The platforming is spot on and the shooting is perfection. It drops in at number 73 on our list. Share your memories in the comments. Thanks for watching. I work with a bunch of younger gamers, mostly between the ages of 21 and 27, and most of them tell me Dark Souls is the hardest video game of all time. This is where I laugh and say, clearly none of you have ever played Ghosts and Goblins on the NES. Usually I get blank stares and it shows my age a bit, but I swear by the difficulty of this game. Now that the Switch has offered it with their online service, I tell them to give it a shot. Those brave souls that have attempted it failed miserably and told me how right I was. As a kid, I would walk to my neighbor's house up the road and attempt this brutally hard game. We would spend hours and hours just trying to get past the first level. It was insane. We'd pass the controller around frequently because we would die so quickly. 2 hits and that's it. You're done, and off to the next player. To this day, this is the most difficult game I've ever played, and I just scoff at the mention of Dark Souls or anything else. Ghosts and Goblins falls at number 72 on our list. Drop your memories in the comments. Thanks for watching. Adventure Island was a completely excellent multi-round action adventure, and the sequel not only lives up to this high level of quality, it actually surpasses it. Adventure Island 2 throws in all types of new objects to interact with, expanding the scope of the first game and delivering plenty of fun. The visual style is slightly different because everything now has a black outline, making objects look more defined. What really elevates Adventure Island 2 is your ability to ride on dinosaurs. These creatures make the game a lot easier. Jumping's easier because you no longer need a running start to leap high. An entertaining romp, it retains arcade simplicity of the first game while incorporating many worthwhile new features. The controls are responsive and quick, and each dinosaur has a unique feel and actually improves the controls in certain situations. For instance, if you're running on ice with the blue dinosaur, you don't slide. Master Higgins' sprite looks good, cool looking bosses, sound is superb, it's an A+ platform, fun, challenging, and exciting with nice tension between exploration and progression. In the fall of 2003, my younger brother and I were in the midst of a run through the NES collection. A routine visit to our local EB Games yielded an opportunity to add an old favorite to my collection and fill the co-op play void. While scanning through the selection of NES carts on hand, my eyes locked on a familiar title, Jackal. My last experience with Jackal had come more than a decade prior when a childhood friend had acquired the game. He and I spent many hours playing the two-player co-op mode, and while we never successfully beat the game together, we had a ton of fun in the pursuit. Needless to say, that immediate wave of co-op nostalgia, coupled with a low asking price, made it a slam-dunk purchase. As anticipated, Dan and I had an absolute blast working our way together in the truest way to take down the game. We gradually devised zones and strategies to overcome problematic zones with each level and tackle each boss. Defeating the final Super Tank boss and beating the game was truly a triumphant moment for us both. As in the original Gargoyle's Quest for the Game Boy, Gargoyle's Quest 2, The Demon Darkness for the NES puts players in control of the winged and clawed gargoyle enemy from Ghosts and Goblins, who is now a protagonist. In the side-scrolling platform areas, Firebrand can walk, jump, cling to walls, fly, and shoot magic fireballs at the various colorful enemies. You can add other magic to Firebrand's arsenal, including Blockbuster, Claw, Essence of Soulstream, and Darkfire. During the overhead view world map areas, Firebrand talks to zombies, ghouls, and other characters to gain helpful items and advance the storyline. New to the series are magic tornadoes Firebrand can use as platforms for reaching high areas. His objective is to investigate a mysterious black light that drained magic from the land and defeat the being responsible, King Brager. Highly recommend if you can find it for a decent price. Gargoyle's Quest 2 drops in at number 69 on our list. Share your memories in the comments. Thanks for watching. Rygar was one of my favorite NES games as a kid. I loved its side-scrolling and adventure mixture. I don't know if I ever beat it as a kid, but I do remember it was very hard. Coming back and visiting almost 30 years later was fun, but the game's not as hard as I remember. The main thing that I think makes one perceive this game as hard is the lack of saves. If you die, you can continue on at the beginning of your current level with all of your gear, but if you turn your console off, it's game over. I, in fact, left my console running for days as I worked my way through the game. This strategy was working well until my console froze. I was about 2/3 through the game and a few hours invested prior to the freeze. Once I restarted the game, I noticed that the whole world was laid out in the manual. Not only did it show you where each level was, it showed you where each item was. This, plus the fact that I had already played through a good portion of the game, made the second run through a lot quicker. In about 3 hours, I had beat the game. Rygar drops at number 68 on our list. Share your memories in the comments, and thanks for watching. I had never played a PC game before, so I had no idea what a point-and-click adventure game was. So when I was introduced to Shadowgate, I thought the concept of pointing and clicking on things to interact with them was clever and original. My friend Troy got the game at some point during our youth, and we thought that it was cryptic and hard to follow. For reasons that escape me now, one weekend we decided that we were going to beat the game. We tracked down every issue of Nintendo Power we could and scoured through all of the Counselor Corner questions and classified information sections, trying to come up with every nugget of information that we could on the game. With all of this information gathered, we began our quest, and with issues of Nintendo Power opened and scattered all over the basement floor, Troy and I got past every riddle and every puzzle. Finally, we reached the end of the game, defeated the behemoth that awaited us, and saved the day. Shadowgate comes in at number 67 on our list. Share your memories in the comments, and as always, thanks for watching. The first time I saw Metal Storm was in an unlicensed strategy guide called Super Strategies for Nintendo. Published by Consumer Guide, I purchased the guide, which covered 20 or so recently released NES games at a school book fair in 4th or 5th grade, despite the fact that I didn't own a single game actually covered in it. This was years before my parents let me subscribe to Nintendo Power and internet access wasn't yet a household staple. Out of all the games covered in the guide, Metal Storm was by far the one that stood out the most. I really wanted to play it, but at the time I couldn't even find it in stores. I finally got to play the game sometime later when some friends rented it for the weekend, and it was a thing of beauty, with amazing graphics, innovative gameplay, and excellent play control. Unfortunately, it'd be decades before I'd play the game again. Since I couldn't find it in the wild, Metal Storm was one of the first games I ever got on eBay. I was elated that it looked every bit as smooth and polished as it had the first time I played it all those years ago. Share your memories in the comments. Thanks for watching. At its heart, Ganbarigamen 2 is an action-adventure title. You wander through the very large, multi-screen environments fighting off foes, gathering items, and more. Your ultimate goal is to find 3 pass items so that you can move on to the next stage. Unfortunately, these items are hidden and in some cases quite well. Basic gameplay has you wandering around in each outdoor area of the game searching for the aforementioned passes. Enemies constantly spawn in, and getting hit by them or their projectiles results in losing health. This is restored by food items, but when it's completely depleted, you lose a life. Money is a surprisingly big part of the game. Littered in every stage are numerous shops that sell a wide variety of items. The game itself is a lot of fun. Ganbarigamen 2 shines best in multiplayer though. It's the first game in the franchise to offer simultaneous play in the form of a co-op mode. This sort of game is a bit difficult to work together on, but multiplayer is still the best way to play. The original Double Dragon was disappointing. It made significant changes from the arcade version that we all knew and loved, including the need to earn moves and the addition of strange little mini-stages and the removal of the 2-player option, thus making the actual title of the game meaningless. Then along came the much-anticipated sequel, which blew the first game away in every conceivable way. Obviously this was a good thing, but it's actually quite strange given the arcade sequel wasn't as good as the original and the NES version deviated from that even more. For those reasons, I wasn't expecting much. But my friend and I saw the review in Mean Machines magazine, and they pretty much described it as the best NES game ever. We both trusted the magazine a great deal, so we decided to ignore our lingering disappointment from the NES original and give it a go. From the moment we fired it up, we were addicted and played the game solidly for weeks. In fact, I wanted to play it so much that I was going to his house every opportunity, which annoyed his mother to the point where I was banned for a few days, with the excuse that I was keeping him from doing his homework. Super Mario Bros. 2 in Japan was the first game in which the 2 Mario twins exhibited unique styles of control. You could choose from the title screen to play as either Mario or Luigi, and your choice greatly influenced how you'd have to play each level, whether more traditionally with the man in red, or more expertly with the guy in green. The new distinction between the brothers was just one of the additions made to make the sequel more of a challenge. It's just a shame that it was a sequel we never saw in America, because Super Mario Bros. 2 for us was a completely different game. A retrofitted version of a title called Doki Doki Panic passed off as a Mario platformer because Nintendo of America thought the real Mario 2 was just too tough. Too much of a challenge. Americans couldn't handle it. And though modified versions of the game have made their trip across the Pacific in the past through titles like Super Mario All-Stars and Super Mario Bros. DX, the original Super Mario Bros. Sequel has never been made available here in its untouched 8-bit form until its release on the Wii. Euphoria takes heavy inspiration from the first Metroid as you navigate a large world consisting of multiple areas, finding new abilities along the way to help you reach extra items in even more locations. Originally released in Japan, it stars Sunsoft's original mascot, Hebe, who, along with some other characters in the game, was made to look slightly different for the Western release. It's one of only 3 games in the series released outside Japan, and curiously enough, none of these 3 were released in North America, only in Europe and Australia. Euphoria is the most infamous of the bunch. It's one of the rarest NES games around, and a complete English copy can go for hundreds of dollars on auction sites, if you're lucky enough to even see one. Euphoria is a great example of a third-party developer beating Nintendo at their own game. It does just about everything the original Metroid did, but better, so if you love Nintendo's action-adventure series, you'd do very well to check this one out. Euphoria pops in at number 62 on our list. Drop your memories in the comments. Final Fantasy II's structure is tangibly different than the more open-world adventure of the first. While you technically can wander the overworld somewhat freely, you're quickly going to encounter some kind of narrative block or powerful monsters your party can't hope to handle. Instead, the sequel is focused on story, with a plot that will sequentially send you to specific locations in the open world. It's one of the earliest examples of what would become the 90s JRPG, and alongside the Dragon Quest series, really starts to define how to tell a grand sweeping adventure in interactive form. Overall, it's impressive that Square tried something new here instead of just simply copying and pasting a safe sequel. There's also a real effort to tell an epic story, maybe one of the first in gaming. Unfortunately, this version doesn't nail it. Later Final Fantasies will offer far stronger plots, while the level grind this version demands doesn't really appear in the series ever again. Definitely play one of the remake versions if you want to experience this tale. Drop your memories in the comments, and thanks for watching. While Nintendo may not have invented the light gun video game genre, the NES helped bring it into the mainstream of video gaming. Seemingly such a simple concept with only one screen, two sprites, and quite literally one button gameplay. Duck Hunt was incredibly accessible and enjoyable to a broad audience. All you had to do was point and click. It's a little wonder that Nintendo made the game a pack-in title for two different NES retail bundles, technically making the game one of the most popular and best-selling titles of the system. Duck Hunt remains a full-featured game that includes both one-duck and two-duck modes, plus a skeet shoot mode with clay pigeons. The game even has a few secrets, such as the unofficial two-player mode. In the single-duck game, the ducks can actually be controlled with the second player's controller, turning what's supposed to be easy mode into a ridiculously fun way to lose friends and enraged loved ones. Duck Hunt falls in at number 60 on our list. Share your memories in the comments, and thanks for watching. With its crisp, clear, colorful, pseudo-3D graphics viewed from an isometric perspective, Snake Rattle and Roll resembles such arcade classics as Congo Bongo and Crystal Castles. Each player controls a running, jumping, swimming, tongue-flicking snake as it goes about eating enough nibbly-pibblies to activate the scale that will open the door to the next stage in 11 levels of play. All this while avoiding or attacking sharks, Bigfoot, Icefoot, snake dozers, blades, anvils, pincushions, and other kooky enemies. The snake you control hits enemies with his tongue, but jumping on them is worth more points. If the snake gets hit by an enemy, it will lose a segment. When it runs out of segments, it'll die. Death also comes by falling too far, running out of time, landing on sharp objects, or getting squashed by a falling object. The landscapes are fiendishly designed to test your dexterity to its limit, but even though it's tough, the game's sheer fun keeps you glued to the Nintendo for hours on end. Drop your memories in the comments. Thanks for watching. Baseball Stars was the first NES sports game to feature a battery backup. If you have the time and patience for it, you could create a 6-team league with each team playing a 125-game schedule. As kids, myself and 5 of my friends thought it would be a great idea to create a full league. We got about 3/4 of the way through a season, which took us a little more than 6 months. The cart changed hands a few times over those months to accommodate for vacation and groundings. Needless to say, a whole lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into this season, and the battery in our cart was holding it all together. One fateful day, my father decided to play my NES while I was at school, and when I returned home, I turned on my console to discover that our season was gone. All those hours wasted. That was bad, but the worst part was figuring out how I was going to tell my friends that all of their hard work was for nothing. I invited them over that night and held an owner's meeting. After I broke down what had happened, they mostly understood except for my friend James. He still hasn't spoken to me to this day. Let this be a lesson to you all. Don't let your parents play your NES. Drop your memories in the comments. Thanks for watching. In 1999, for some unexplained reason, my local Walmart put out a complete copy of Dragon Warrior for sale. I've never been a big RPG fan, but I thought it was cool to see an NES game on the shelf long after the store stopped carrying them. One day when I was doing some back-to-school shopping with my family, I wanted to show the oddity to my brother. To my surprise, Dragon Warrior was gone, but in its place was a sealed copy of Mega Man 5 for just $20. Mega Man remains one of my favorite video game franchises today, but I only ever got to read about Part 5 in pages of GamePro magazine. I excitedly picked up the game and told my mom that we weren't going home without it. Mega Man 5 is an okay game, but it's easily one of the weaker NES entries in the series. To me though, it will always hold a special place in my heart because of the extraordinary circumstances of how I found it. It was also the first Mega Man game on NES that I owned. Mega Man 5 comes in at number 57 on our list. Share your memories in the comments. Thanks for watching. When most people hear of Little Samson, they think of the ridiculous amount of money the rare cart sells for. Sure, the graphics are stellar and the gameplay is top-notch, but it's the rarity of the game that the majority of gamers know about. Personally, I'm an avid NES collector who's been trying to complete the NES library for more than 10 years now, so Little Samson was a title that I thought I could only dream about. One night a few years ago, I decided to hop on eBay and send some lowball offers to people who were selling the game. A Spanish-speaking seller replied and said that if I was willing to help him with his English papers for school, as well as send him my limited edition Zelda 3DS, he would send me his Little Samson. I thought he was crazy, but this was probably my best chance to get the game, so I agreed to his terms. After 3 months of helping him with his schoolwork, he sent me Little Samson, and upon receipt, I sent him the 3DS. It was a perfect transaction. The seller and I became good friends, and we still keep in contact with each other. I love owning the game, but the story behind how I acquired it is worth more to me than the card itself. Drop your memories in the comments. Thanks for watching. RC Pro-Am was the first racing game I played on the NES, originally during summer 1989. I played it at my cousin's house into the wee hours of the morning, just about every time my brothers and I stayed there on weekends or holidays. Even though it was a one-player game, the level of difficulty pretty much ensured that one player would only get so far before losing too many races and being forced to hand the controller over to the next player on deck. Strangely enough, the element of the game that became the most embedded in my mind over the years was the artwork of the car parts on the vehicle progress screen shown before each race. Large and lovely pixel art depicting an engine block, a turbofan, and a racing tire. They were wonderful images that came to represent the game as a whole for me. Iconography has been the bread and butter of my work in game development for a good portion of my career, and you can bet I've managed on more than one occasion to sneak an homage or two to those 8-bit images into my work. RC Pro-Am comes at number 55 on our list. Drop your memories in the comments. Thanks for watching. In the summer of 1992, I was firmly in Mega Man mode. The preceding months had seen my conquests of Mega Man 2, Mega Man 3, and Mega Man respectively, and I was eager for another challenge. Mega Man 4 was the next in my crosshairs, and fortunately for me, my local video store had a copy available for rent. The bulk of the game played out like its predecessors, with plenty of challenges, but nothing insurmountable. The final encounter with Dr. Wily, on the other hand, provided an epic struggle that thoroughly tested the limits of my gaming will. Wily's disappearing act coupled with his difficult-to-dodge attacks gave me absolute fits. At the age of 12, my general tendency was to focus heavily on offense and to finish a boss battle as swiftly as possible. However, in this particular scenario, that was basically the recipe for inefficiency and death. When the battle finally concluded, it was easily one of the most rewarding endings and credit roll sequences that I had witnessed to this point, due largely to the amount of effort expended and, more importantly, the tactical lessons learned. If you grew up in the UK in the 80s, chances are that you had an 8-bit home microcomputer, and if you did, it's likely you owned games by Codemasters. Not only did the company offer a host of original titles for less than £3, but their games were usually very good. In fact, Codemasters titles had become so popular that they were regularly topping the charts above big-budget, full-price releases that cost more than 3 times the price. So when my friend Martin told me that Codemasters started making games for the NES, I was excited. I figured their first game would be Dizzy, but they actually went back to their roots with the top-down racing game Micro Machines. Martin bought the game the moment it came out, and I was eager to play it with him. And in true Codemasters style, they put their stamp on the game with tremendous attention to detail. You didn't just race the little cars around a track. These tracks were created from different parts of your house, such as the breakfast table and the desk where you did your homework. There were few multiplayer games on the NES as fun as Micro Machines, and it drops in at number 53 on our list. It's not the best RPG as I've seen claimed all over the internet, but Sweet Home mostly lives up to the hype of its fans. I was genuinely spooked by the end of this macabre quest and found some of the party's objectives to be disturbing. The role-playing conventions are very tight and focused here. You can really feel your party becoming stronger as you enter areas, struggle for a few battles, and then find new equipment or level up. It's a rewarding system. It's also a simple one. The lack of stores, towns, etc. is sure to turn some gamers off, but I didn't care at all about their absence. Sweet Home is a very focused game that's mostly about telling a ghostly story sprinkled with battles against memorably gruesome and haunting foes. It's a great game even if it's overrated a fair amount by its rabid fanbase. Regardless, Sweet Home is one of the best role-playing games for the original Nintendo. It's also one of the greatest survival horror titles that I've played. Sweet Home drops in at number 52 on our list. Share your memories in the comments. Thanks for watching. The sequel to Contra finds soldiers Bill, codename Mad Dog, and Lance, codename Scorpion, taking on the vile alien warmonger Red Falcon once again. Super C features the same type of brutally intense run-and-gun gameplay as its progenitor, but adds a couple of vertical scrolling overhead stages to the mix, replacing the behind-the-back levels from Contra. As players run, jump, flip, and shoot their way through 8 exciting levels, aliens are constantly attacking. There are giant bosses to battle as well. A machine gun that fires straight and diagonally is the standard weapon, but players can grab power-ups in the form of lasers, flamethrowers, rapid fire, barriers, mega shells, and the ever-popular spread gun. Unlike Contra, Super C doesn't use the famous Konami code. Rather, at the title screen you press a different code. Right, left, down, up, A, B, start for 10 lives. If you enjoy a good shooter, you should definitely add this one to your NES library. Thanks for watching!